Today, we're talking about the players on the Nebraska roster who are not getting enough attention. That's next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins.
Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome in the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you. Let's take a look back a little bit on today's episode. So we're coming out of spring. Everybody's putting their lists together. You're about to start seeing the Mitch, are you putting together a list of the most, important players or indispensable or whatever, anything like that this summer?
Oh, in the summer? I don't know. I'm trying not to think past next week. I've got vacation coming up, and really that's kind of where my mind is at. No, I'll have some lists for sure. But the summer goes really fast because you get to June and then the College World Series comes, and the next thing you know, it's Big Ten Media Days. So I can't promise what kind of lists I'll have, but lists are a staple of the summer months.
So we're going to go through a few things here as there has been definitively players, or maybe we'll haggle over a couple of these, Mitch, players that we've talked about a lot from spring ball, whose names popped up a lot, who talked to the media a lot, who were assigned to kind of do, and put in leadership positions and stuff like that. People that just, took a lot of airspace during spring ball. We're going to use this episode today to go through a bunch of players that we feel like are not getting enough attention, that are not being talked about enough, that people should probably the time talked about them does not equal the impact that they will play on the field this fall. Is that an accurate description of what we're doing?
Yeah.
Here today?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple categories here. There's like the players who are getting talked about some, but we don't think it's enough because it's their role is going to be way up at the top. Like they could be in the conversation for all Big Ten. I got two that I'm eyeing right here on this list right out of the gate that I think could be all Big Ten or second team all Big Ten kind of players. And they're getting talked about, but not enough in my opinion. And then there is the category of players who just aren't getting talked about enough because I don't know. Maybe there's some new player at their position who's the hot item, or this player's just been a bit forgotten. There's one on here who's been injured for an extended period of time, or has just been languishing maybe, and is ready to break out in the scheme this year. So there's different categories, but they all kind of fit under the heading of not getting enough attention. So Dylan Raiola is not going to be a part of this discussion.
He gets talked about a lot. There's also probably a guy or two that I could think of who are just like complete dark horses. Like, we haven't talked about this person at all, and they're going to end up playing or having a significant role. So we'll cover all that here on today's show. So when you think about this, Mitch, and you are you're the one who sort of came up with this idea. Who do you sort of think of? Where does your mind go to first?
Well, the reason that I came up with the genesis of the idea came from a Matt Rule Instagram story.
Oh, he's been on the Instagram stories lately talking about stuff that only he knows. It's very interesting.
Yeah. So as I always say, when Instagram comes up, it came up on the show Monday when we talked about Trey Taylor. I don't see this, but it gets brought to my attention. That doesn't matter. It just did it in this instance. It came. I think I saw it on another social media channel, and I was like, "What?"
He's a good follow on IG though. If you're on the IG, hop on there, and every once in a while you could tell what's going on, where he's at. I mean, you never know where the heck in the world the guy's at. So especially during this time of the season, or in this time of the the offseason. So it's a good follow. And
it's true. Like if I was going to follow one person on Instagram that wasn't like an immediate family member, it would probably be Matt Rule.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. He's got some interesting things up his sleeve, including posting pictures of players who, he says, I know something that they don't know. And this is the guy you're about to talk about.
Yeah. So Demetrius Bell, wide receiver in the Nebraska program, who was injured in the spring game a year ago, 2024, sat out all of the season and really hadn't been able to get back in the kind of shape that allowed him to get out on the field and compete among that top group of receivers. And it's been taken over by Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter, and you have the new freshman. Yeah, we have the freshman from last year, Ja'Cory Barney, and then the guys who were in his shoes this year, most notably Isaiah Mosey and Cortez Mills. So, and then there's another one we're going to talk about here on this list too. But Bell was those hot young receivers. He was one of them not long ago. They talked about Demetrius Bell in his first year in the program in 23 like he was one of the best players on the whole roster, but he didn't play that year, and then he didn't play last year because of the knee injury. So my concern, I think the concern among a lot of observers has been, is he going to get back to that? Is it even physically possible? So Matt Rule says, I know something y'all don't know. And he posts a picture of number 11, Demetrius Bell. So those are lyrics from an Aldine song.
Is
Road Anthem.
Okay. Yeah. I would imagine.
Is it a song?
Well, I mean, yes, that is a song. That is a song, but I would imagine that those words have been used in many songs.
Probably, if you Google it, and that's how I found that out.
Nice.
A lot of hits come up for that one particular song. So he may have. I'm not saying he coined the phrase, but it seems to be in like pop culture today that he's the one who gets most credit for it. And I don't know if Matt Rule was like playing off of that, or if he just happened to come up with the same phrase that was in the song. Either way, it's a catchy little thing to say, and it gets people's attention. And you don't say that unless like something's going on.
Yeah.
With Demetrius Bell.
He did that with Emmett Johnson, who is obviously not going to be on this list. But he said that, Matt Rule proclaimed on his IG story that he knew something that others didn't know about Emmett Johnson, which is not surprising given the conversation about Emmett Johnson, but this one's a little bit under the radar a little bit. So yeah, I'd be curious. Now he could have changed up the words on that and dropped should have dropped the line from 8 Mile in the rap battle. The Papa Doc, Clarence's parents have a real nice marriage. I know something about you. He could have done that, but that's not what he was going for. He was going for, I know something. What is it? I know something they don't know.
No, I know something y'all don't know.
I know something y'all don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Matt Rule lived in Texas for a couple of years, so he can speak like a sure. Country music artist.
He could drop a y'all for sure.
It's really one of the great things about Matt Rule is that he can go from like the New Yorker to the Philly guy to the Texan, and I don't think he brings a whole lot of his Carolina time into his into his vibe. Yeah. But now he's Mr. Nebraska, the good life. Oh, well, we'll talk about this later. Matt Rule was dropping a good life reference on Twitter, a social media site that I do frequent.
Wow.
The other day. So yeah, he's got a lot of cards up his sleeve. So anyway, number 1 on the list for me is Demetrius Bell.
All right, here's a guy that I would like to talk about because at the tail end of spring, we finally started to hear like a little bit. And I don't know, maybe it was forced by that point, but everybody, I'm thinking about that linebacker position. I like if there is a lock stock, like surefire productive guy that Nebraska got out of the transfer portal, it's Marcus Watson Trent. And like, I love the pickup, like, and you could do whatever you want with him. He could be on the field for however long you want him to be. He can rack up as many tackles, as you need him to. If you feel like you need to put a more athletic piece in there, then fine. He's probably not your guy, but he's going to be in the right place and he's going to wrap up, right? Like Nebraska, has really needed some consistency at that position. So like this is a surefire, productive piece, and it's possible that he does similar things than what he did over the last 3 years at Georgia Southern when he racked up 100 tackles in each of the last 3 years. That would be, that'd be an all Big Ten caliber, type of deal right there. So I don't know that I could put those expectations on him, but we don't talk about a starter on defense nearly enough for Marcus Watson-Trent.
He's a starter. Yeah, he's a starter. And I'm just going to make this a package deal. We'll go 2 and 3 on this list. And I don't know if these are really in any kind of order. We're just going through. These are 10 players that aren't being discussed enough, period, not 1 through 10. But another guy in because it's very similar is Dasan McCullough, the transfer from Oklahoma. So these are both linebackers. They're both veteran players, and they're both playing positions where Nebraska has an emerging star, true freshman from last season, alongside MWT. Are they going to call him that? They call him Mar. MWT sounds like the model of a refrigerator water filter.
Sounds like an airport code.
Yeah, it does.
I'm flying into 8 MWT today.
They might be. Anyway, that's Marcus Watson-Trent. So he's there alongside, and can be, I think, a little bit of a mentor or like a stabilizing force for Vincent Shavers, who is the man that gets a lot of the attention right now because of the way that he finished the season at inside linebacker. And with McCullough, it's Willis McGahee the fourth. Same situation. Really came on at the end of last year. Looked great in the Pinstripe Bowl and in a couple of the November games. So, but how important are McCullough and Watson-Trent to the continued upward movement of McGahee and Shavers? I think very, very important because instead of asking those sophomores to come in and play 60 reps, they can now play like 30 or 35 reps, and so much more effective in that situation. So you really hope that at those positions, Nebraska stays healthy and can have all 4 of those players, the veteran and then the younger guy, on the field.
It's a great situation for all 4 of them, I think. And like you said, it's going to lead to getting more production out of each of those guys as well. And you're just in a position, like you said, where you don't have to ask them to do quite as much. And you have some versatility there. Like Watson-Trent and Shavers are different players, and McCullough and McGahee are different players, right? They bring something different.
Definitely. Yeah, you can, without even having seen the 2 transfers play much, you can just tell from their body types and like what they've been asked to do in their previous stops that they are different players than what Nebraska's got in those 2 returning sophomores. So all right, let's come back. And we'll hit on a couple of names in the secondary that are getting attention, but again, I don't think it's enough. That's coming up next.
But before we do, a reminder from our friends from the FanDuel Sportsbook. Game 1 of the West Finals tonight. As of right now, the Thunder are 7.5-point favorites in Game 1. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. We got the conference finals and the NBA finals coming up, and we need you to be on the action. Now is the time to do it as well, whether it's betting on an individual player, prop, results of a game, overs, unders, who's going to be in the NBA finals, who's going to play who. It's all there for you on the FanDuel Sportsbook, and they make it easy with the live betting feature. You could stay in the game as long as you'd like to stay in the game. And if you got a read, then you could take advantage of it. How about $200 in bonus bets to add to that excitement if that first $5 bet hits with the FanDuel Sportsbook? It's that simple. Cook up a little same game parlay with that $5 bet. Maybe you could double cash in on that opportunity. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place that first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, second segment of Tuesday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. We are going through 10 players who we believe are not getting enough attention as we get through we're in the second half of the offseason here for Nebraska. We're under 100 days until the regular season, as ESPN very loudly told us last week. Love getting that pronouncement every year in May. So I meant to mention this Monday on the pod. Matt Rule tweeted out a welcome to the good life greeting to Dan Mullen.
Yes.
The UNLV coach, formerly of Florida and Mississippi State, in reply to a Dan Mullen tweet with a photograph of the Drover.
That's right.
Omaha steak establishment.
Now, as far as I know, Dan Mullen does not work for D1Baseball.com and does not have a standing reservation at the Drover during the College World Series.
It's too early. It's too early for that anyway. Maybe he's covering the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, he's the coach at UNLV. And so he's just hanging out, took a picture of the Drover, just left it out there. Matt Rule said, welcome to town. Why was he here? I have no idea.
Have we talked on the show before about my feelings that the Drover is a great place to get a cut of meat, but it gets way too much love in June from visitors, specifically media visitors to Omaha? There are many, many, many fine places to get a steak in this town. And if you walk around the press box at the Chuck, you would think there was one.
It's great. We went to last year to celebrate, hopefully job well done, with our Westwood One radio crew after the College World Series.
Yeah, a good idea.
We tried to call in to the Drover. They were like, we got nothing for you. And I'm like, that's all right. We'll go to anywhere else in town. So we went to a different place and got right in. It was nice and quiet, toward the end of the College World Series. But yeah, so many great places. You'll never run into a bad steak in Omaha. That's the trick.
Get a whiskey. I mean, you get a whiskey fillet and a salad bar. It's hard to. They still have the salad bar set up there. It's been a while since
I've been there in a long time either. Yeah.
Yeah. I gave some recommendations out to the Oregon crew since they're in Omaha for an extended period of time. I did some interviews on Sunday and they were looking for a place to experience Omaha. So I threw some. I gave him that. I gave him the Drover. But I gave him some nice spots down in the old market too. I'm gonna get to the ballpark this week, and maybe the Ducks will stick around, and I'll get to ask if they took me up on that.
That's good.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we're gonna continue our conversation about players on the Nebraska roster who are not getting enough attention, and I want to go straight to the back of this defense. And I've harped on this at times through the offseason that I think the number one area of deficiency with Nebraska's defense in 2024 was its ability to cover in man-to-man. And it really took a hit when Tommy Hill was hurt early in the season. And Sierra Wright, fortunately for Nebraska, stepped up and found himself as a key contributor after that first bye, really. But I don't know. If we're giving him enough love, because they have to cover, and I think they're in much better position to do it with the projected starters and with the players behind those projected starters. Now there are two players who played basically starting roles at corner last year and have been allowed to move to safety, and I'm talking about Marquise Buford and Malcolm Hartzog. So that speaks to the upgrade that Nebraska's made and really just the maturity and development of some of the young players on the roster. But the guys who I think should be getting a lot of attention, to me, are the favorites to start. One is Sierra Wright, who I mentioned. I think he's ready to play at an all Big Ten level this year. And then Andrew Marshall, the transfer from Idaho. He didn't make that top 100 impact transfer list that Max Olson and ESPN put out last week, and I wouldn't necessarily expect like a number 2 corner at Nebraska to make that list, but Dane Key did, Isaiah Hunter did, Rocco Spindler did. I think Marshall's every bit as important to what Nebraska needs to get done this year as those three, and we should be talking about him more.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that McCullough didn't end up on that list too. Just to throw that in there from a guy we already talked about. Okay, so Marshall and Wright, I think if you did it today, those are two, possibly the top 2 guys at corner at the very least, probably 2 out of the top 3 or 4. So you're wondering. So here's where my bonus guy comes in. Like, all right, who has made their way into that conversation and risen up? Where does Donovan Jones sit in a conversation like this? Like is he in the we talked about him enough category? Because
I think we've talked about him a lot. Yeah,
because he had the breakout game in the Pinstripe Bowl. But I don't know. I continue to hear good things about the things that he is continue to do and to expand upon that and practice this spring. And I feel like if you did it today, if Nebraska released a depth chart today, he'd be absolutely on it. Yeah,
on the depth chart,
or on in the 2 deep of each of the corner spots. So like the top 4, possibly in the top 2. So yeah, I think maybe he's a guy that we've probably talked about a little bit too much. But I think the conversation is warranted given the move he's sort of made.
If it was just the bowl game and you saw him flash and make several plays and not get exposed as a true freshman in a bowl game, then I might lean towards saying we're talking about him too much. Like we're making too much of that performance. But yeah, I've heard additional good things about Donovan Jones, the Omaha North grad. So I don't think it's too much, and the more the better. Like Nebraska's going to need 3-4 corners who can cover, even if the guys who are playing as starters stay healthy. They're going to have nickel packages and various there's some teams on Nebraska's schedule who are going to put 3-4, maybe even 5 wide receivers out there, and they're going to have to bring corners off the bench. So but I'm going with Wright and Marshall, who are both from Southern California, as the 2 here at the top.
So all things considered, like how this is coming, we've mentioned a couple linebackers and we've mentioned a couple of corners already. And so I don't know about you, Mitch. Like I feel good about those 2 levels of the defense, like really solid after spring ball. The question that everybody has is how do you replace all those guys, the defensive line and who's coming up? So there's been a lot of conversation about Keona Davis and Williams Winery and what his role might look like. I mean, Nebraska's got a guy back who was not as big of an impact as we expected him to be last year as he was in his first year, and that's Cam Lenhart. I think he's going to be expected to play a lot. This one hits me from like this is a really important guy standpoint, and you sort of, I don't know if it's a hope, but you're putting much more on him in 2025 than you were at any other point in his career. So he's a big kind of linchpin, I think, for this defense.
Yeah, absolutely. They need Cam Lenhart. Like you're gonna the flashy guys at that position are Davis and Winery, and Lenhart is the bread and butter. Lenhart's the guy that they've got to get out there on first and second down when Michigan comes into Lincoln on September 27th and says, all right, we don't have our head coach. We got a true freshman quarterback. This crowd is off its rocker for a 6 p.m. kickoff. We're going to take the air out of this place by running the ball 38 times in the first half. And if you can stop us, great. But we don't think you can. That seems like Michigan, right? Cam Lenhart's got to be stout up front on the D line in that situation, because that's not the time for Keona Davis and Williams Winery to shine. That's your 3rd-year player who's matured in the program and can stand up to a Michigan offensive lineman and make tackles at the line of scrimmage. So for me, he's really important, and because he's so important, I don't think he's getting enough run. All right, we got 2 pass catchers and 2 offensive linemen left on this list.
Yeah.
Let's come back in the last segment and talk about those guys.
All right. Welcome back. We'll set the table for what's coming up today in Nebraska athletics after we get through these guys here. Let's go to Justin Evans, who like he's the first name that I thought that when I sort of looked at this and I poured over the names and I thought, oh man, well we probably talk about him a lot, but he probably didn't quite get as much run, just like quietly. I think there is a real high trust level there. And I think it probably wasn't as big of a, when we thought about, we're thinking about at the beginning of spring, hey, is it going to be Evans who takes over at center? For Ben Scott, like what's going to happen there? It probably wasn't as big of a conversation as we were having on the outside. I think they probably had a pretty good idea where that one was going, and he's lived up to the billing, at least from the practice side. So Justin Evans is a huge piece of what they're doing.
Yeah, it was a typical, like, Donovan Raiola was not showing his cards, and then I think one day Dana Holgerson came out and was asked about the center spot. And he's like, yeah, we're rock solid there. Justin Evans has been the starter since the day as the season ended last year. I feel better about him than I do any position up front. He's going to be an all Big Ten player. He might be an All-American. It's like, oh,
amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Like we didn't know that. He's and he did get some run after those comments from Holgerson, but up until that point, it had been pretty quiet about exactly what was going to happen at center. It was known within the program. And then the other guy up front is a backup, but I think with the transfer of Grant Segrin after the spring, who's landed at Oklahoma State, the second-year player, redshirt freshman Grant Brix, who Nebraska's very high on, was a top recruit a year ago at this time, needed to put on size, needed to learn how to pass block and pass protect. I think they like how he's coming along. And is he going to play 20 reps? Well, you hope not, because that means that Elijah Pritchett or Tyler Kanak or maybe Teddy Prohaska, somebody out there, Gunnar Gatula, who plays tackle, is on the sideline. But sooner or later, Grant Brick's time in this program to take center stage is going to come. And it might be sooner than people think, because things happen on the offensive line. Players will change positions. Players will get an ankle injury and have to miss a week. Players will be out long-term. And he's not far from being the next man up.
Yeah. So those are a couple important pieces on sort of varying levels on the offensive line. Okay, now the pass catchers that you mentioned, this one is just, I think it's a question mark. As far as from what you lost last year, looking at the tight end position, Luke Lindenmeyer is the first guy up at that spot. Now, he hasn't shown a whole lot in his career. Now you listen to the coaches talk about him and you're like, yeah, I think he, can do all the things that we're going to need him to do. And they have a little bit more flexibility with some other pieces like Carter Nelson. And we don't know what they're going to get out of a guy like Markway at that spot. But Lindenmeyer sort of assumes the role for the time being, and they're certainly going to ask a lot of him going into this season. He'll play a lot because he can do both of the things that tight ends need to do.
Every time the tight end position came up in conversation around spring practice, or in really, you can go all through the offseason, it's been, okay, well, what's Heinrich Haarberg going to do? And how locked in can he get? How much of this offense can he learn in 1 year of playing the position? And the conversation inevitably kind of steers back toward Luke Lindenmeyer. Well, he's the one that Nebraska trusts. And unfairly, when I think of Luke Lindenmeyer, I often think of the ball that he didn't get to in the end zone against Illinois that could have won that game for Nebraska before it went to overtime and the roof caved in. But that's not entirely his fault. Like, the quarterback has to put it in the right spot. And yeah, he's not Ja'Cory Barney. He's not Thomas Fidone with his ability to get under a floating pass like that. But he does do everything well, and he does everything right. And that's why Holgerson loves him. When Dana came in November, you saw the reps and the trust in Luke Lindenmeyer rise to a point where, going into the bowl game, you even with Fidone on the roster, he was the player I think that Nebraska felt best about in that matchup against Boston College.
Yeah, no, I think so too. So we'll see. They'll ask a lot more out of him, I think, this year.
And then the last one is Janiron Bonner, a wide receiver, and He's a Swiss Army knife. So he's going to be on the field a lot, because if you need somebody to line up in the backfield who plays receiver, like if you need all of a sudden a hybrid H-back, tight end, fullback position, a slot receiver, you can even put him out wide and create some kind of a mismatch. He's not going to get behind a corner with his size, but he probably does more can play more spots at the receiver spot than anybody else on the team. And so much of the hype has been about Dane Keene, Isaiah Hunter, Ja'Cory Barney. We talked about Demetrius Bell not getting enough attention, but I think Bonner's in that same spot.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what they do. I mean, they obviously feel, I think him and Lindenmeyer are good people to mention next to each other, just because I think the coaching staff just feels like they could trust both of those guys. They could do whatever is asked of them. I mean, as evidenced by Bonner playing 100 different positions and doing a bunch of different things in his Nebraska career so far. So yeah, I'd be curious to see what they get out of him. Maybe not a high ceiling guy, but certainly a dude that they could put out there for a various number of plays and have success with.
He can get you 30 catches, 300 yards, something like that. I mean, move the chains. I just think he can be a very effective player. Anybody else that you want to mention who you was left out here?
No, I got my guy in for I got my Donovan Jones, whatever happens at that defensive back spot. Like, I'd throw in an Amari Sanders or something like that.
He's another back in that mix.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only other one that I thought about mentioning or wanted to mention was Kyle Cunanan, the kicker, who has transferred in from where's he from? Charlotte, the Charlotte 49ers. And Nebraska doesn't take that guy if there's not a 50% chance or so that he's going to be the starting kicker. And we just don't know.
He would be the favorite at this point, right?
I mean, because the other two you don't know about their health.
Yeah,
and I think with John Hole, you're probably a little gun shy, because the kickers who have been hurt in the past, it's lingered just way too long. And with Hole, it might have been a thing where he's fine now on June 1st, but you can't take that risk. And with some of the relaxed situation that's coming with the roster limits, just go get somebody. If you need a third kicker, have a third kicker ready to go. And Cunanan may end up being the starter. So we'll see. To finish the show today, we have to give an update on Jordy Bahl, because this is the Locked On Jordy Bahl podcast.
That's right.
Until the Nebraska softball season is over. So want to mention that she is one of 3 finalists for the USA Softball ESPN College Player of the Year. The others are Arkansas first baseman Bree Ellis, formerly of Auburn. They're all transfers, all 3. Jordy, of course, played 2 years at Oklahoma. And then Texas Tech two-way superstar Najeri Kennedy, who transferred to Lubbock from Stanford, which is that entirely makes sense to do that. And NIL was a huge factor in that one. Good for Kennedy, the most highly compensated softball player in the history of softball. I bring this up because Bree Ellis, her mother, on social media last week was tearing down Jordy Bahl. Apparently this is out there that these two are rivals for the Player of the Year candidate award, and Bree Ellis's mom, who has now made her comments private. You can't go look at it. So there are screenshots available, but
screenshots live forever.
Yeah, she was talking about how Jordy doesn't finish every game that she starts like Bree Ellis does, the first baseman. Not sure if that's ever been used as a stat in the sport of softball or baseball, which is my comparison in the past. But anyway, she said Bree Ellis is also a two-way player. I think she means hitting and defense, because she doesn't pitch. So that's Jordy, right, by that definition, is a 3-way player. And then also that if Ellis played in the Big Ten, her stats would be double what they are in the more powerful SEC. So
50 plus home runs. I'd love to see it. we'll see how that player of the year race shakes out.
Love seeing softball smack talk among parents on social media.
It's good. My money's on Jordy Bahl. I don't, without knowing anything about the voting process or what should happen, but
when the votes are cast, what they take into consideration. But
give me Jordy Bahl. And then finally, Nebraska baseball has basically what amounts to a do or die game tonight against Michigan State at Charles Schwab Field. Yeah, it's not basically, it's a real deal. They're going with Ty Horn against the best pitcher in the league, Joseph Jirwa, the 6'8" lefty we talked about extensively on this podcast yesterday. Do you think Nebraska lives to? I mean, they'll fight another day. It's just, will there be anything on the line on Friday when they play Oregon?
I don't love their chances against Jirwa. It's going to be a cold night, pitcher-friendly ballpark. I'm not saying he's going to throw a no-hitter or anything like that, but it's going to be tough to score runs. And Ty Horn has got a live arm, the sophomore, for Nebraska. I think he's like a high ceiling guy, but there's a little risk there. So I would imagine that's why Nebraska's throwing him, because like you're spinning the wheel here.
It's all hands on deck.
Yeah.
If anybody gets into trouble, you go to your best guy like immediately. Yeah.
If you give up 3 runs, I think in this game and you're Nebraska, then it's lights out. Because Jirwa can go a long way. He can go well over 100 pitches. So, and their season's on the line too, the Spartans. So they obviously need to win the Big Ten tournament coming in as the 12 seed. So, all right, we'll see. We'll be back. We'll be back at some point this week. Connor and I are both traveling for work-related endeavors, so we'll find a time to bring you more episodes. Maybe some TV announcements coming up for the football season, like a Friday night type of thing from Fox could be coming out this week. We'll be monitoring that, and we'll bring you the news and reaction when it hits. So thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith is there. He's got the latest rumors, portal entries, portal exits would be more notable at this time of year, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape by following the portal. You can find it on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.